all kinds of things happen to human beings. And the fate of what happens as a result is in the coping. I know a lot of people that would do this right, you wouldn't have those things to cope with. I don't think we know enough about that, how we can avoid things, and I don't think avoiding things is helpful anyway. But it's the coping with these things that give us the kind of strength and give us our opportunities. So death is something to cope with.
Yeah.
We all are going to die one day.
And you also point out quite a bit that we all have weaknesses. We're all imperfect. None of us can see our own back.
Right, exactly. This is important to remember too, because the piece of how I look at reality.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'll change that. What I think of reality is what I see. Okay? What I see is not the total reality. And here's where the back comes in. You've got a back, and everybody's got a back, but how many people have seen it? A lot of other people see your back, but you don't see it.
So we always have the unknown just right behind us.
That's right. And that's, you see, when you start putting things together like that, Jeff, then you begin to get an awareness of the absurdity of thinking that all there is in the world is what you see in it.
When you focus quite a lot in your lifetime on human potential, on dealing with people who come, from tormented families where there was abuse, where the parents didn't get along with each other, these are the kind of situations that I suppose socially we tend to blame on our worst social problems, drugs and crime. And you feel very hopeful that a person's life need not be conditioned by their past.
Well, it's not only a matter of my feeling, but I demonstrate that. Mm-hmm. Now, let me give you a little metaphor. Let's think that the human being has countless number of little jets, that there's a pump inside, that there's countless number of jets. And if our energy were free to flow, then these jets were all open, that this would just put in fantastic energy. But most of these, or many of these jets are closed. We shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that, and who's going to hate us if we do this and that and something else. So as a result, we live half lives. No.
When you say it sounds like they're closed because of our own sort of mental chatter.
Exactly. Well, there are all the rules about what we shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. When we open those up, you know what happens to a fountain where only some of the jets will let water come out?
Yeah.
Sometimes the water comes out in big gushes in some of them, mm-hmm. and it's very uneven because the central pressure to make the water come out is stopped by the holes that are stopped. Okay. And I believe that's our central place inside of us with the energy. Mm-hmm. So opening up all of these holes, so to speak, which are our feelings and are our possibilities. And that when we allow that to happen, then we become in a totally different place. Because
so what is she talking? I mean, she's speaking very metaphorically, but how does this apply to you? And how does this apply to clients that come in the room constantly? How many of you have ever made a choice based off of fear out of what you thought someone might think of you? So you didn't do this because, I'm scared, I don't want to stick out, I want to get along, I want to make sure I give this person a good impression. From tiny things that seem unimportant, and some of them probably are, but sometimes bigger things, like where to go to college, what to major in, what classes to take. I meet students a lot, maybe more than you might think, who are literally here, and they don't necessarily want to be here. They're here for other reasons, because my parents went here, and this is where I got kind of placed, and majoring in things. When they really don't want to be in their major, but they feel some kind of pressure. That's practically what she's talking about. And that's what that word means. But this is also from the online lecture. This is where you start to hear the influence of the experiential therapist for Carl Rogers and Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. Self-actualization, in case you didn't write it down or you just didn't watch the online lecture, that's the idea that we all have this natural tendency to be our fullest self. That's what she's talking about with her little fountain metaphor. Who doesn't want to be authentic and do what they want to do? And by that, we don't mean like also doing things that hurt people. We mean, choosing your own path, choosing your own goals, being authentic, being able to be who you are, no matter who you're with. And the metaphor she's using, and it's exactly what Maslow was talking about, you need to get all these needs met, and then you can be your full self. And that's what Carl Rogers talked about. So many people never meet this self-actualization because they've lived she's talking about half lives. I like the way she put that. In other words, you're not really your authentic true self. You've become sort of a half, or maybe even a quarter representation of who you wanted to be or who you are because of getting blocked somehow. That's just one example. She's almost done.
Because we then can have harmony moving, and you have the total force of the energy that's possible. And that's all I've done with people, is open up.
Help people get really in touch with their feelings again.
Their feelings, and allow themselves to remember that their feelings are not the parts of them that decide what should happen. Feelings are like a temperature, a thermometer would say what things are. You move over to another part of yourself and you make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people have said, you go into your feelings, that's going to be the basis of your decisions.
You'll make a bad decision then. So cut off your feelings completely.
And so what is the important thing is that our feelings are like the juice that keeps us in a whole piece and gives us the ability to see better, to think better, to feel better. They own the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But an emotion that you have which isn't owned, you say, no, I don't have it, is one that splits your energy because it puts you into this kind of thing. You cannot say that you aren't what you are. Now, what I mean is, yes, you can say that, but that doesn't change it. If you're angry, for instance, and you say, oh, no, I'm not angry, or you're feeling very excited about something, you say, no, I'm not excited. You see, those are the kinds of emotional lies that just steal our energy away.
And I hear people speak this way all the time. People will, I like the example she used because it's a simple one to understand, but someone will have an outburst of anger, and they'll lash out at a roommate or a friend, and then they'll say, that's not who I am. Actually, apparently it is who you are, because you did that and you're denying it. You're literally denying that you acted in this way. And by telling yourself that little emotional lie, you're setting yourself back and you're not being your full self. So until you can own your experiences and your emotions, you're not even being authentic with yourself, much less other people. But anyway, more on that later. So her theory has a name, bless you again. She calls it the human validation process model. Kind of a mouthful. And I got some things to watch. This is where it gets fun because, that it hasn't been fun for the last 10 weeks. But Virginia Satir was late enough in the game that we actually have video of her actually doing things. With Bowen, we just got to kind of talk about him. I don't think there is a video of Bowen anywhere, at least not doing therapy. But you actually get to see Virginia doing her stuff, doing therapy in about a half hour or so. And we also have lots of talks with her, interviews, etc., and the way she thought. So the human validation process model. Just like all the other theorists we talked about, well, all two of them, we've got a premise, we've got some terms to get through, some basic concepts, and then we'll get to her therapy and some techniques that she used. So the premise of the human validation model, it's experiential. Now you already know what that means. And I can't emphasize enough. I tried to get it across in a little online lecture, but when Virginia, the reason she was considered a maverick and these experiential therapists were considered like, ooh, I don't know, is because they played a really heavy emphasis. You can hear the way she talks. She's talking about people's emotions. And at this point in the history of MFT had gotten away from that. They literally were treating people in the therapy room like they were machines, like they were feedback loops. Your family's going back to homeostasis. Let's try to initiate a positive feedback loop. Like, what? They would literally start treating families like they're anti-aircraft guns. Let's just change the servo mechanism and your son will be fine. The experiential therapists started talking to individuals and focusing on their individual emotions. And MFT had spent so much time getting away from that this felt new. But they're still systemic. They think systemically. These theories are very systemic. It's just systemic with also, why can't you do both? Why can't you focus on people's emotions and think systemically? That's how they do. So there's an emotional focus, an individual focus, specifically, that's why we passed this out. We'll get to this in a little bit. Specifically, self-esteem. That's what Virginia is all about. Let me write another equation for you. which will help make the rest of this make sense. According to Virginia Satir, what she just talked about and how she believes, emotional suppression, so remember that's our root. It's always going to be the root of all our problems. But emotional suppression, and that just means you in any way not being able to be who you are, whether by choice or by force somehow. So emotional suppression leads to lower self-esteem, a lower valuation of the self, which leads to this, a feeling of estrangement from your family and loved ones and probably your community, friends. Estrangement means you feel cut off, whether you are or not. Yeah.
Can you repeat
The little equation there?
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
absolutely. So emotional suppression, it's always going to be our starting point with these, leads to lower self-esteem. And lower self-esteem leads to you feeling estranged or cut off. In other words, you don't feel an authentic emotional connection to anybody. And that's going to end up leading to all of the problems. But we'll get to those in a little bit. And yes, I just had that up there just so you don't forget. There's humanistic roots. What we mean by that is the Carl Rogers influence, the Maslow influence that we went over in the online lecture. So that's kind of the whole idea that Virginia comes at you in the therapy room with. So to her, what she was really, really good at, and this is hard for a lot of people to do, is, well, let me put it this way. I gave this example to Team A on Tuesday. So it's been a while, and I don't know why they popped. Oh, now I remember why. It's coming up. So this couple just popped in my head on Tuesday when we were talking. I worked with a couple once. They were older. I mean, not old, but the guy was in his 60s. The woman was in her young 50s. For both of them, I think it was his third marriage, her second marriage. So both, right? So they'd both been divorced. They'd both been through the ringer. They both had kids who were adults. So there wasn't kids. It was just the two of them. And things were okay, I guess, for a few years until they were getting ready to move. And the wife was in the attic going through some stuff, and she found a tape. If you don't know what tapes are, there's little plastic boxes with this funky ribbon inside them, and on that ribbon, there's pictures of people that move when you put it in a machine called a VCR. But anyway, so she found this tape. And that's out of curiosity because it was in his box of special stuff. Like they each had their own boxes full of, and she had never gone through his stuff, but she was just curious. Probably think what she told me was like, maybe it's like him in an old high school musical, or wouldn't it be fun to find like an old memory of your husband? Like, ooh. So she pops it in. Guess what it is? Any ideas?
Like an old wedding video?
No. I mean, it had something to do with an ex. It was a sex. Exactly. It was a series. Right, and he had kept it, and then she dug a little bit further because she's like, "What?" And she found like all these letters and correspondence that he had kept with her, and it turns out that, long story short, he was still in touch with this person. And then, so this is how I met. They came in the therapy room, and he was you talk about validating someone means you listen to them, right? We went through the silly process of me repeating everything. You talk about the polar opposite of that. In the room, he would just call her crazy. Like, I don't know why this is making you so upset. This is from years ago. And she's literally just explaining, like, look, there's just some trust issues that weren't there before because you never told me about this. Like, and now you're keeping, this is in your special box of things you want to keep. I mean, he claimed, oh, I didn't mean to put that in there. Like, what? And she's thinking, like, who the hell makes a sex tape? But anyway, so she completely not validated. Now, it's really, really easy, believe me, to sit in that room with this couple and feel really bad for her and not so bad for him, especially the way he's treating her in the therapy room. The reason I'm telling you this is Virginia had this knack for being empathetic towards both of these individuals, even though in a very authentic sense. Is he behaving poorly and making bad decisions? Clearly. But to Virginia Satir, she sees someone who's emotionally suppressed somehow in his life, who has very low, maybe lower self-esteem in his life, who maybe feels estranged from things in his life, and that's why he's acting this way. So she sees someone, you see an asshole, she sees someone who's hurting inside, and she sees it as her job to kind of dig deeper. Does this make sense? So she had this knack of just being, well, with Carl Rogers, I mentioned the term unconditional positive regard. He also had this knack for even people who have no one else to connect to because everyone thinks they're a jerk because of what they've done, and maybe they are. Maybe they're behaving like a jerk. But maybe they've never been treated with unconditional positive regard and that sort of thing. So that's where she's coming in. That'll set the stage. It'll save me a story in about 10 minutes or so. So listen to Virginia. We already did that. I thought we would do that. So our basic concept. I don't think I need to define the first basic concept because it's been a concept in the world of psychology since the beginning of psychology, and that is your self-esteem or your self-worth. Although I will say, just to highlight it, we're talking about the emotional connection you have to yourself. Self-concept is what you think about yourself. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. And that's what Virginia is getting into. Absolutely central, and that's why it's in the middle of the wheel. Everything to her is connected to this, your self-worth. She has this other idea. Now, the word mandala isn't necessarily reserved just for Virginia Satir, but this was also not just a central concept, but also a tool that she used in the therapy room. Guess what you were just working on? Self-mandala. That's what this wheel represents. Virginia believes that your self-worth, your self-esteem, is tied to these 8 interlocking aspects of your life. Each one impacts the other, which impacts the other, which all feeds. Kind of how she saw it. That's why you're in the middle. These different important aspects of your life, and I'm going to assume everyone thinks all of these are at least semi-important. You made your own hierarchy, which is perfectly fine. So now the next part of this exercise. So now, again, you're going to keep these. I'm not going to look at these. So I would actually encourage you to be honest. But imagine doing this in the therapy room with someone. You can see how this is a great way, maybe a good place to start. So Bowen did genograms. Mnuchin made a family map of you. Well, Virginia would start sometimes, not always, but start with a self-mandala, just to kind of gauge where you're at in your life. So now what I'd like you to do is think about these 8 interlocking aspects. And starting from the center, so start from the self, fill your little pieces of the pie as to how well you think you're doing at each of these. For example, let's just say nutritional, picking an easy one. Nutritional, yes, right on. I eat healthy 9 times out of 10. You would fill that piece of the pie almost all the way full. So just go around the wheel, and inevitably, you're going to have some that are really full, some that are not, some that are halfway, but just do it for yourself. This is subjective. So make your own little self-mandala. And again, I think I said it, but this is tied to your discussion forum. I'm having a new experience. This might lead to new emotional expression. Hopefully a new way of being. Of course, you can see how this is just a natural conversation. So according to Virginia, it's okay if you're not done, I'm just kind of talking. According to Virginia, and all of these feed the self. That's why they're all going towards the center. Now the interesting thing, I did this on purpose, I had you make a hierarchy of these. I'm not sure if Virginia did this little thing or not, but you can look at that hierarchy and toss it out the window. Because you all placed importance on them, which isn't, because that's important, because that tells you personally which ones you place value on and which ones you place less value on. What Virginia would tell you, though, is that's a false belief, because all 8 of these are vitally important to a full self. And I don't have this talk, I can't find it, I don't know where it's at, but she gave a really good interview one time that really resonated with me, at least, where she talked about how a lot of people have this false idea that you only have so much energy as a person, and you can only compartmentalize your energy into one aspect of your life. And always giving, like, an example would be like someone who's all invested in their career. Like, I just don't have time for this or that. I'm all in on this. So in that part of their life is great, but then physically they're falling apart. Emotionally they're falling apart because they're not putting any time into that. Americans are great at this. Like, we are, not sure if you know this, but we are horrible at taking time for ourselves. We just don't do it. We don't take vacations when they're offered to us. We don't take sick time when it's offered to us, right? We just plow through, like, gotta get her done. Which is bizarre to someone like Virginia Satir. Like, man, this is just as important as that. So throw out the hierarchy, they're all important. And now what you have in front of you, and again, this is your personal stuff, you have exactly a roadmap of how to increase your self-esteem and your self-worth, because whatever highs are less than or even empty is exactly the part of your life where a change in the way you live and the way you are might actually benefit you. Right? We talk, this is like an old cliche, right? If you can't take care of yourself, you can't think of anyone else. Like, this is the way we talk. We don't do a good job of actually acting on it, but it's certainly a popular saying. But you literally in front of you now have a roadmap, at least according to Virginia, of exactly where to focus your energy at and improve one aspect. And this is the beauty of it. This is, I guess, emotional systems theory, self-esteem systems theory. These are all interrelated. So if you improve one of them, you'll improve all of them. But that's where she goes back to her false belief. Humans in America believe if you put energy into this, it's going to somehow, well, this one will die. No, so actually it'll improve. It'll get even better. So there you go. That's the self mandala. It's one of my, I really like doing this with clients. Kids, everyone gets into it. It's really fun when you have a family with them. We have like a 5-year-old chiming in on their ideas of like spirituality and nutrition, and then they talk about their dad, like, yeah, you drink beer or whatever. It's just, it's great. So it's a neat little thing. So feel free to steal it, use it in your life. All right, so moving on. And then again, tied to the discussion forum post. Communication. I know communication is not a new concept, but to Virginia, communication is everything inside the family. I mean, why do women say they got divorced? Communication issues. It is. Communication is everything, obviously, to a relationship. So it's vital to a healthy person. It's vital to a healthy family. More on this in a second. She gets a lot more specific on what she's talking about here. She has a name for what she calls healthy communication. She uses the word congruent. And I know you're furiously writing something down, so I'm going to really tick you off and show another video. So you might want to just stop, pick up where you're leaving at. So here's her describing what she means by congruent communication. By the way, someone on Team A, maybe they're listening in, pointed out, I'd never noticed this before, but I told them on Tuesday I'll never watch these videos in the same way again. She kept, like, she was looking at the screen. She's like, I just can't stop noticing how close they're sitting together. But you always noticed it too? Like I never noticed it. Maybe because I'm always staring at the computer screen. I'm actually not even watching what's going on. But look at their knees as they're sitting. It's like a synapse. Like they have two neurons. Like they're not touching, but they're as close as you can barely put a piece of paper in between them. But anyway.
Do you think they set up the chairs like that every time?
Actually, I'll say exactly what I said on Tuesday. I think it's Virginia. Just wait. Virginia, when she does therapy, I guess Bowen is the objective coach, right? Bowen's going to be over here. Here's my grand theory, differentiation of. So he's going to teach you everything, and therefore you will change. Virginia is one thing that made her different. Is she'll get in your face. I mean, just wait till you see. Sometimes she is literally right there. She touches people. She'll give you hugs. She'll move people around. She does things that people watched her therapy and said that's very different than you sitting on it's about as different as you can get from sitting on a couch and just talking to someone, because she is very touchy-feely, I guess, and not in a creepy way. Like, tell me everything. No, it's just wait. So I think that's what it is, actually. That's just who she is. I think she's almost like a magnet. I think if you're sitting in the room with her, like you'll feel your chair just slowly, and then it's just something about her. You just want to give her a hug. She's just going to make you feel better. I don't know. We'll see. But here's her talking about communication, sitting oddly close to a guy by the name of Jeffrey.
In the school of family therapy that you founded, Conjoint Family Therapy, you spent a lot of focus is just studying the way communication occurs in a family to diagnose what that family's problems are.
And as long as, that's right, and as long as we're on that subject, let me tell you something that came out so clearly after I worked with many, many people. There are two dialogues that go on. One is a dialogue of the words, and the other is a dialogue of feeling. And many times those are different. I'll give you a little illustration. Ask me how I am.
How are you?
I'm fine, Jeff. Now, when I said that, tell me what happened to you.
Well, you had a very cold tone to your voice, so I thought you're trying to distance.
Yeah, but didn't you hear the words? That I was fine?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right, so you see, this is typical.
Yeah.
Or ask me again if I like something, whatever it is.
Okay. You enjoy being here on TV today, Virginia?
Oh, I think that it's just wonderful. Now I'm doing something else. Now I'm sending out another. Now I'm doing something.
I told the class on Tuesday, this is such a nerd moment. When I think about teaching this class every spring, I think of this moment that we're having right now. It's one of my favorite things to pause and repeat. Look at him. Like, he's going to kill someone later that night. Anyway, can you just see his hair? Like he dyes it red every night. Anyway, Jeffrey, let's move on.
Something else. I'm sending out another message about the words that disclaim what I'm doing. Now, the thing I found out, just like in the first illustration, the thing I found out is those two levels of the dialogue come from two different places in the person. They are not an attempt to bring trouble to other people. That's not where it comes. These are totally unconscious.
I think you call one level the meta communication.
Right.
In other words, every time we communicate, we have a message, and we're also communicating a message about our message.
That's right, exactly. And that's, you see, a lot of people, and I think it's even been true of psychologists, when people give what we call double level messages, which is where my body says one thing in voice, different from my words, that this is a way that this is deliberately done. It isn't. The words come from the left brain, what you should do. The other part comes from the right brain. Now, suppose that I have a rule that says that I should never complain to you. So let's suppose I'm in terrible pain and you ask me how I am, and I say, fine. What am I doing? This says I've got a rule that I should never complain. And it says I have pain, but I'm giving the message that of what I should do, which is I should never complain.
And it's as if underneath any conversation, no matter how, I suppose, abstract or intellectual, there's always a human being under there with emotions, often needing to be validated.
That's, of course, one of the things I try to teach people. I don't have to tell you, I go to lectures. I mean, and people presenting things, and I listen, and all of a sudden, they may be talking about all this erudition. And underneath, I hear, I'm hurting. I feel disappointed. I would love for you to help me.
This is where I started telling the story of that couple, but we'll watch the rest of this. But have you ever, maybe this has never happened to you. I mean, you've only had 21 trips around the sun, so it probably will at some point, but have you ever been just living your life, doing something at a job, and someone's come up to you and just said, what's wrong? Because something about the way, and you had no idea you were putting off like this signal that something's wrong, but someone detected it. That's sort of what she's talking about here is, like, sometimes, I guess she's always has this emotional radar out there that she can see it in people. Sometimes, I mean, she doesn't want to make too many assumptions, but she is really good at reading people and can see when someone just isn't okay, even though they're acting okay. But to her, that's this person, they're not being authentic. There's something going on for this person. And that's what she's talking about here. She goes to lectures and
I would love for you to help me. And it comes out in these very erudite terms. Now, if I were to go to one of those people and to say, I'd like to help you, the chances are that they would say, how did you know I needed help? What makes you think I need help?
They might even deny it.
Sure, because usually people like that have rules they shouldn't ask for help, not that they don't need it. And this is the kind of stuff that goes on with people all the time. See, I can always see and hear better on you than you can hear and see in yourself, simply because I'm outside of you. And then when I share with you what I'm seeing and hearing, if it, for instance, happens to meet one of your rules, which is I should never ask for anything, I should always be right, etc., then you have to deny what's going on. And then if I am not careful, I have to prove my point, and pretty soon we estrange ourselves.
And in our culture, I suppose one of the very common rules is never to reveal what you really feel, especially of the vulnerable parts.
Well, see, if you think that's absolutely true, if you think about it, the people's feeling about what's vulnerable is their deep feelings. But most people give themselves credit, with quotation marks, for only having bad things inside, not good things. Or even, I even found people who felt that they couldn't talk about love feelings because somebody else would be jealous. So as a result, we don't communicate the thing that is really what human beings are about.
So you're getting a taste of what Virginia means here. So, oops, let me fast forward that. So congruent means a few things. On a general level, congruency in your communication means that the words that you're saying match your actions. Your verbals and your non-verbals are in touch with one another. Rules is actually another one of her concepts coming up, but just to plant a seed, that's related to this because they're all sort of tied together. One, I guess, quote unquote, rule that some people have about themselves is that it's not okay to not be okay. So they're always putting on a facade that they're okay. So when she's talking about, that's what she means by rules. You have unconscious rules about yourself and others. But that's a very popular one that you come across in the therapy room. That a lot of people just think it's not okay to not be okay. When in fact, it's perfectly normal to not be okay. What's not healthy is to pretend you're okay when things aren't okay. So it's matching your verbal and your nonverbal. And then, if you haven't written it down, it's clear. So there's no hidden covert messages going on. It's complete, and by assertive, she doesn't mean this in a negative connotation. By assertive, she means you say what it is you actually honestly feel. That's what she means by assertive. I have a feeling Virginia is also the kind of person, on one hand, she'll be the person to show you empathy unconditionally and give you a hug. She's also the kind of person who's going to tell you exactly what she thinks. And that's what a lot of people need from a therapist. They've never maybe had someone tell them, call them out on something, or say, look, maybe they never had anybody say it's okay to not be okay. Remember that scene from Good Will Hunting? You've seen Good Will Hunting? Robin Williams, oh my God. Never mind. Robin Williams, Matt Damon, you should go watch that. But there's a classic scene in that film that always gets played on repeat. Robin Williams is a therapist, and he's telling Matt Damon's character that he's playing that it's not his fault, the stuff that happened to him. It's a very powerful scene in that film. But anyway, that's what assertive means. You're open. So she has a name for this. If you're someone who does this, and I know we're always talking about people who are screwed up. Not everyone is. Virginia she's a walking embodiment of what she wants people to be like. Someone who has congruency in their communication is what she calls a leveler. So a leveler does two things consistently in their relationship. The first thing that they do is they are assertive in their communication. That means you openly express your emotions in an authentic way. The second thing a leveler does is they also validate those around them. I hope you've had this experience, but so often we have the opposite. But you know you have a good relationship with someone when you can disagree with them, especially on like a hot button issue. But yet they show you respect. They don't, the fact that you disagree doesn't interfere with your relationship. Have you ever had that? I hope you've had that experience. But fortunately, we see that's a sign that you're both levelers in your relationship. You can openly express, no, I believe this. And the other person can say, well, I believe this. And you can still hug each other at the end of the day. Share your poopy underwear with each other. Those of you who walked in late have no idea what that means. I'm not going to take the time to explain it to you now. So a leveler is, I guess, your goal. That's what you want. However, sometimes things go wrong. And just let me get this out of the way. You don't need to write it down again because I've already said it like 18 times. There's 4, according to Virginia, types of negative communicators. But where this comes from is our equation of someone feeling emotionally suppressed, which means they have a lower self-worth, which means they feel estranged, and that's why they act the way that they do. And these 4 things are the 4 ways that they act that are not healthy. But the reason they're acting this way all gets tied back to their self-worth and their emotional suppression. So the 4 types of negative communication. So think of your own families, think of your roommate's family that you've met and got scared by, or just think of your own friends and your own relationships that you have. And chances are you can think of examples of people who just consistently act this way when they're in their relationships. And by the way, these get instigated when we're under stress. So everyone can pretend to be perfect when things are good, right? It's when problems happen. That's when you truly know someone, right? I'm sure you've had this experience where something was a challenge and you're like, now I know who you really are as a person and I don't like it. When people are under stress, that's when you really see all the layers get peeled off. The masks have to fly off. Our first one is called the placator. I am sure you've heard the word placating before. A placator is someone who is 100% non-assertive. They're almost never genuine. Because their mission is to please others. They're so consumed with how others are going to see them. And they're so consumed with anxiety. What would happen if I'm actually honest here? So they just that's why we call them I haven't even looked at the PowerPoint stuff. They call them they're yes people. They agree with things, they go along with the crowd. But they're denying their own self-emotional expression. Second type is the blamer. These are individuals who take no responsibility whatsoever. It's always someone else's fault. Think of the example that I gave with my couple and the sex tape. He's blaming her for how she's feeling. You're crazy. I mean, that's not a good thing. If you just to know, your spouse, don't call them crazy. It doesn't sit well. Don't you love it when people tell you you're overreacting? That's like husband 101. Don't say that. So this is what we mean. So we don't just mean you're telling people what to do. You're not that kind of dictator. No, you blame people for how they're feeling. You take no responsibility for your part in the system, in the dance. See, now we can talk like MFT nerds. You know what that means. In other words, they have no concept of circular causality. They don't have any role in this. Yeah, it's not my fault you feel this way. I mean, sure, I made a sex tape. Come on. What the way you're acting is so stupid. Now I'm like embodying this guy. I remember the way I felt in the session too. Be Virginia. Be Virginia. Be Virginia. All right. Then we have the computer. Now, there's a couple things to add to this. The computers, yes, they never show really too much emotion like a computer. The computer is something that's not on the PowerPoint slide, though. The computer talks a lot. They always have explanations for things. They have a way of talking around problems. They always seem to have intelligent-sounding things to say about things, but the words they're saying rarely have any substance. They never take a stand, a true stand. So they never really reveal what they're feeling underneath. Do you know anyone in your life, and you probably do, who puts on a different face, almost a different personality, depending on who they're interacting with? And when you're sitting with this person, you never know if they're actually genuine. Like, just give me a silly example. Let's say, I don't know, this is just too damn easy. We just had this crazy election, right? Trump and Biden. Let's say you voted for Biden, and you're having a conversation with someone, and in front of you, they're like, oh, I know, that Trump is just horrible. I just can't stand him. Okay. But then you have a relative who's voting for Trump. Fine, who cares? I'm not trying to put lines here. But you know that person goes to that person, and in front of them, your cousin, Biden, socialism and communism is going to take our guns and all our freedom. And then in front of that person, the same person's like, oh, I know, God, Biden's horrible. I'm voting for Trump. If you never know, when that person goes to the voting booth, who did the computer vote for? No one knows, because no one knows. They always have a good game. They can talk and talk and talk and talk. But all this talk is worthless because it doesn't really mean anything. So they're overanalyzing, they're always over talking, but they're never really being genuine. Looking around the room, it seems like every single one of you is thinking of someone in your life who's exactly like that. And that's what Virginia means by the computer. So not Spock walking around with no emotion, like I'm 9. No, they're always talking. They're always overanalyzing, but they're never. Well, they might be being authentic. You just never know. And then we have the distractor. The distractor actually can take on all of these different forms at different times. The point to someone being a distractor is they will do anything and everything they can to change the subject, to not talk about what's important to be talked about. Sometimes they'll placate, sometimes they'll blame. So sometimes people slip into these roles pretty distinctly. The distractor is constantly doing things to shake things up. I think this is, a couple more basic concepts. I know, we're getting there. And then soon we get to watch Virginia in action. It's always fun to watch her do something. So the primary triad, no, I don't need to tell you that the mother, father, child relationship is important. That's okay. Why does she need to highlight and call this the primary triad? Well, now she's talking about things from the kid's point of view. So think of you were a kid not too long ago. The mother, the primary triad is absolutely vital to the kid, not just for the common sense reasons, like of course we need a nice mom and dad. But what Virginia is going to get at here is, what does a child learn from this relationship? Why is this so important to them beyond just the list of things you could probably write down commonsensical? Now we're talking about in an emotional sense, this is from a psychological sense. One really important thing kids learn from their mother and their father or their parents and or legal guardian, could be a single parent too, we're not trying to exclude anybody. In other words, what do kids really learn from that hierarchy above them, whoever it is? One thing they learn very distinctly is how to cope with stress. They might learn that people can argue and then resolve that argument. Good. People disagree. Couples get in fights. Families argue. Couples also make up and communicate and resolve those conflicts. So hopefully that's what's going on. But sometimes kids learn not so good things, like the way we cope with problems is pretending they don't exist. Pretend long enough and the problem just goes away. Or maybe they learn to cope with stress. We turn to this. We just drink wine all day. Stress equals beer, whatever it is. So what kids learn how to cope with stuff from their parents. They also get a script written inside their head. In the world of psychology, we also call this a schema. You might have heard of a schema. I don't know why I said it like that. A schema. Yay, schema. Jean Piaget, remember this guy? Schemas, framework of knowledge about things. Some of your schemas inside your head are things we could probably do without. Like, you know what this is. You know it's a grease marker. You know where I'm supposed to use it. Whatever. You have knowledge about this. But some of our schemas are abstract. But they're very important. So kids literally learn what it means to be a spouse. This is why some people that come from divorced families get so nervous to get into relationships or maybe have kids. Because they get nervous because, I hear this in the therapy room a lot. They're nervous to have a kid because they don't have a role model in their life of what it means to be a dad. So they're scared they're going to screw up because they didn't learn this. They learned the opposite, or they learned nothing. But this is where kids get their knowledge of what it means to be a spouse and also a parent. They're literally absorbing it constantly. And of course, kids learn how to communicate. They watch their parents communicate. They watch the adults around them communicate. So if they see a placater all the time, they learn that that's what you're supposed to do. They see the blamer, they learn that. So they learn your good things, they learn your bad things. And no one's perfect. You just hope the scales are tipped in the more positive direction. And last but not least, Virginia was really big on this with parents. And this is true. And if you've talked to enough parents, kids do have this insane, innate, magical ability to find your weakness and latch onto it and squeeze every ounce of the things they want from you. Virginia wasn't the first person, and she isn't the last person to make this point. But parents with their kids, it's vital to be a united front. This is the only area of being a single parent where you have it easier, because you don't have to worry about parent B in the background. What she's saying is, let's say something happens, parent A comes in the room and says, cell phone is gone for a week. No way, that was horrible. Whatever decision you made, that was bad. I warned you, you're losing this. Let's say parent B is in the background and is like, I mean, your father's right. What you did was wrong. You can just one night. Cell phone's gone one night. No, you killed everything. You just blew up the whole relationship, because that kid just learned who's the good cop, who's the bad cop, and they know exactly who they need to go to. Who's the dominator? Who's the weak one? I sense weakness in mother. Next week I shall take that. That's what children do inside their head. They're trying to take over. So, united front. You disagree about the phone thing, but have that conversation in your room behind locked doors at 3 a.m. when you know the kid's asleep, because they're probably listening. Signs of weakness? No. So be a united front, because kids will manipulate this triangle to their own end. And last, yes, I put it on there for a reason. Choose the last basic concept. I want to see therapy. Just wait. Family rules. And not just family rules, but also self rules. Some rules are overt. In other words, they are spoken out loud. In this house, on Thursdays, we eat together. Okay. Those are the easy ones. Right? Anyone knows, maybe they're on your wall, your house rule. I've actually seen people that have, like, rule number 9, thou shalt not eat past 8 p.m. So rules are either overt or they're covert. Like, the covert ones are the fun ones. So the covert ones are the ones that are not necessarily spoken out loud. They're the ones that people just know about. Like, I can't go to this person. Or I can't be myself with that person. I can with this person, but not that person. So some rules are overt, some rules are covert. I just gave you kind of a silly example here just to illustrate this. Not that this would ever happen in my house, but let's say Kyla knows that her bedtime is 9. She knows that if she just stalls and fails, look at those, they're terrible kids. They're so horrible. The scary thing is this one now is 13 and that one's 9. I'm literally in a time warp. But the covert rule that Kyla knows is that my bedtime's not really 9 o'clock. It's more like 10, and I can just get away with it. So, last thing of this is important. Rules need to be realistic, fit the house. So it comes down to 4 coping skills. That guy in the therapy room that's coming off like a jerk, he doesn't have any other way of being. That's him. And to be honest, I think he really did believe that his wife was thinking crazily and talking crazily. I don't think he had the capacity to truly understand her perspective and her point of view. I'm just going to get these up there. We can start watching some therapy here. So if you want to be like Virginia, here's what you need. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. I think I told you in the beginning of this class, some of the theories we'll talk about, it'll resonate. Like, okay, I think I could do that. That makes sense to me. Not everyone is Virginia Satir or even like her. But if you are, this is kind of how you feel therapy should go. Definitely like Rogers, so we got that unconditional positive regard, that empathy. Man, I mean, it's just there. Now, we didn't talk about a guy named Fritz Perls. There's this time's sake. What we mean by number 2 is the past. It's not that the past is irrelevant. The past is important. But Virginia is mainly concerned with what's happening now. So there's a very immediate focus. Virginia probably has very little interest in seeing your genogram. Like, that's great. I'm happy depression ran through your family. I'm more concerned about you right now in 2021. She also sees herself a little bit like a detective, so you're always sitting back looking for the communication patterns. But man, because of her empathy, because of number one, her ultimate goal is to make everyone in that room feel comfortable enough to express herself. That's what we mean by secure environment. I teach a first-year seminar. You didn't know. I'm sure. If any of you there? Maybe you were there. An obscure topic. We talk about demonic possession. What? I know. Long story. I'll tell you if you want to know. But we inevitably have discussions about religion and beliefs. That's actually what the course is about. It's about beliefs and critical thinking, which inevitably leads to people feeling a little bit uncomfortable, at least at first, because who wants to talk about their religion? Right? We don't talk. Don't we even say that? Like, don't talk about politics or religion. Like, what? Because people get scared to share how they believe, because they're afraid of being judged. This is like Virginia Satira 101. So I spend a lot of time in that background in that class trying to create a secure environment so that people actually feel comfortable talking. I don't know if I achieved that, but that's the goal anyway. In other words, you don't feel like you're going to be judged if you say something. And then she has some concrete goals. She wants to boost your self-esteem, of course, your self-confidence, and just really, each individual in that family, she wants to increase their self-worth. Isn't this what we all want, I guess? No matter what relationship you're in, everyone wants to feel valued.
What Jeff just now said.
Did you notice what he just did?
No, I don't think that.
He's talking about a chance to answer this, to express themselves. He's not saying. So, but Virginia's going to try to.
What do you mean first? Let's see, we gotta be careful now that we don't get our wires all tangled.
Wires crossed.
Got it?
Mhm.
Okay. I don't know here, tying ourselves up.
There's also something subtle and unspoken going on. Yeah.
This is the fact that the dad faces it, really.
The what?
Like the dad is the one who we don't look at, like who the camera doesn't see.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if that's purposeful or not. No. Noticing anything else about this? Just. They're all sitting. Hey, is this how you, when you get together with your roommates, like, is this how you guys all sit? Hey guys, everyone. That's all. I need to talk. I mean, maybe if you're playing like a card game or something, but I'm going to go out on a limb here with a family that doesn't really openly express themselves. Simply sitting this close together, especially with dad right there, this to me is probably something that doesn't happen, which makes them, they're probably all feeling a little uncomfortable, maybe a little anxiety. That's exactly what Virginia wants. She wants them to feel, she's giving them a new experience. Just simply sitting like that is something different. You remember the family I told you about a couple weeks ago, well, maybe 3 or 4, that came in like one organism? I can't remember what we were talking about, like enmeshment or something like that. The mom was in the middle, and then the son and the daughter, and they came in and they sat on the love seat all together. One of the things I did with them, it was from a different theoretical perspective though, but one thing I did with them is I forced them to sit apart. And it made them feel like, you could even see, like, oh, like they needed the closeness so much that sitting apart made them feel weird in the room. She did this on purpose. This is an attempt. Contact comes in the form of, and see, she's even like touching the boy, like she's right there with you. And now she's changing places. Now she's right there in the mom. Maybe mom felt better when she was over there. So she's doing things on purpose to shake things up, to get people to maybe say things that they've never said.
Could you, let's move up here a little bit. Move a little closer. Watch your fingers. Could you move a little closer to me? What would help you more with Jack when he goes into these silent times. If we talk to him about it, I worry. I'm worried about what he's thinking as well as what's really going on. Would you make a little play with me? Here's Jack, and he's there and he's not talking. Let's make a little play, your little play about what's going on. Is it something like, I wonder why Jack is upset? Is it have something to do with me? Is he angry and not telling me? Is it something like that? Yeah. I usually say, are you mad at me? What did I do? When he doesn't talk to me, he builds walls. And I feel like sometimes like I'm on the outside and his silence is kind of a barrier. Okay.
So some things that are very obvious, some things not so obvious. Her second stage, or I guess thing that happens inside the room, is when chaos happens. The chaos is the new emotional expression. By chaos, she means someone was actually willing to take a risk. That wife just started talking. Did you, by the way, did you notice the kids' reactions when she moved the dad closer to the mom? They were like, what? One of the kids even started laughing, like moved his arm, like, oh my gosh. Never seen them so close before. Dad is so warm and fuzzy. Or mom's expressing herself, and dad's just like, keep it coming. So chaos. Someone finally takes a risk. Now, sometimes this is a very emotional, like, I've never told you this, but sometimes people just need help knowing how to say something. They've been hiding something from someone. I should have told you about that sex tape months ago. So sometimes people just need help with this part, taking the risk. Great example of this is the next clip you'll see. There's a dad who has full-time custody of his kids. The reason he has full custody of his kids is the mom was abusive to them. He hasn't told them about this because he doesn't know how to have this conversation, right? He wants to be open and authentic with them, why they don't get to see their mom. But how do you do this? Well, Virginia has gotten beyond the contact, and this is literally when, and again, it's not, chaos is maybe a misnomer. Like, she just means something new is about to happen. We've given you the new experience. Now it's time for our new emotional expression to happen.
I don't know. They know now. It's obvious because we've been going back and forth to court. They know now that the reason they don't see their mother is because we don't want them to. You can't keep it under. But I'm really not quite sure how to handle that. Sometimes that backfires on you.
Well, let me tell you some pieces that may be helpful at this level of things. At this level of things. There's a difference between saying what I just said, that here is a lady who hurt you. And gets angry, doesn't know what she's doing. That's a different thing from your saying that she's no good. No. A different kind of thing from that.
Mm-hmm.
And my sense of it is that you need to be very straight about that.
Okay.
And let me see at this moment if you're willing to say to each of your sons that right now that they will not be able to see their mother because she hurts them. And you have to wait until she knows how to deal with herself better, because see, that's the same problem as what you're trying to get them to do. That they may not hurt, and you're protecting them from being hurt. And I wonder how you would feel just moving up to this son of yours and saying to him that you will
You're
not
not going to see your mother anymore because
come up here, and just come front to front with him and take his hands. Can you move up a little bit more?
Gotcha.
Now to take both his hands and to tell him that.
I'm not gonna let you see your mother anymore, Aaron, because she hurt you.
She loves me. She don't hurt me.
Yeah, she loves you very much, but she hurts you. She don't always know what she's doing.
Daddy hurts me sometimes.
Yeah.
Mama hurts me.
I wonder if you could also share with him that you're not gonna let him hurt Robbie, and Robbie, you're gonna let Robbie hurt him.
Yeah, and I don't want you to hurt Robbie. I'm not gonna let it happen. And I'm not gonna let Robbie hurt you either.
But again, like in a family like this, it's so important. And of course, I feel so much about that little self inside of each one, which has gotten covered up or stunted or something in their growth, and is waiting there to be opened. Sometimes when I talk like this to people, especially certain professionals, you know, they think I went off the deep end. But you know, that's what we're playing with all the time in a good way, is helping the energy of each person to begin to open and to flower.
So that's the chaos part. And then, of course, integration. And what integration simply means is you created this safe environment where people finally feel willing to take the risk, and the therapist is there to help organize the new way of being. So, okay, we took this risk. Now what are we going to do with that? So the therapist is there to help them all process this. Everyone has felt safe. All right. Now we have a new normal. We have new information. Now we're communicating a little bit differently. This can be done in dramatic situations like that, where you're talking about something like abuse, or simpler things, that putting things together we've already talked about. Sometimes in the room, you have a wife validate what her husband says. You teach them about that little trick, right? Again, it's not a magic trick, but man, I can't emphasize this enough, like how much it improves relationships when someone actually feels listened to. And it starts with small things, but when you force someone to practice it, it gets inside their head. And for them, sometimes that is a simple new experience. For students in a class, maybe they've never felt validated, so they never say anything. Because every time they say something, the person's like, well, that was dumb. Wrong answer, whatever, like, okay. Anyway, so integration is absorbing the new normal. All right, so there's different techniques. You can see what she does. She has, and there's too many. I mean, again, the other thing with the experiential therapist is you can't really put them in a pamphlet and say, this is what you need to do, because every experience is different. Every couple is different. Every family is different. So there is no pamphlet to say, here's the steps, do this, move the chairs this way. And some people hate that. It's actually one reason I love experiential therapy, because I don't know, I love the creativity of it. I love the in-the-momentness of it. But that doesn't mean we don't have some tools, and I'll just share Virginia's most powerful one. Actually, I'll pass this out. Again, we talked about this. If we weren't, oh, we're getting close. By the way, I had dose number 1. Oh, I think I emailed you guys. Dose number 1 yesterday. Never wanted to get a shot so much in my life. There you go. And if you're wondering, no side effects. Actually, no. So I made the cardinal mistake of getting a shot. I looked at the needle. And I'm still kind of a baby when it comes to getting shots, so some self-admission there. I don't like going to the dentist, and I don't like shots, and I'm 44 years old. But anyway, you're just supposed to like, just look away and think about Little House on the Prairie and relax, right? Well, I want to see this sucker that's going to get jabbed in my arm. And I'm not going to lie, I've seen the flu shots. They're not that. It's just a shot. But this sucker is like twice as long. And I remember thinking about it, I was like, oh my God. Like, why did I look? My wife's like, I got a job. No, she wasn't like that. She was watching too. And she was like, I'm like, that's not a good look. Like, don't do that. You're supposed to be here for me. But she was getting it too. I just elected to go first. But then I'm like, all right. So I'm like, just relax, take a deep breath. And I thought what she was doing, because I could feel her kind of like poking around, like, oh shit, she can't find, like, where's just the right spot to stab. Because I felt like a little, like, I thought what she was doing, because I wasn't watching. I'm not that dumb. I thought she was like looking for a place to put it in. And I'm like, did you find a place to put it in yet? And she's like, oh, we've been done for 20 seconds. Like, what? So no, I actually didn't feel a damn thing. Neither did my wife. And she told us these are new, some kind of, not only is the vaccine new, but whatever they use, it's a new kind of like syringe that they're using. Like put it into people, you're like shaking your head, yeah. I don't know. So she said most people, this has been their reaction. Like, I didn't even know you did it. So I don't have autism yet. I don't have any other side effects. So I'm good. My arm hurts, but other than that, there's nothing. And I can't. So we got to wait like 3-4 weeks or something to get dose number 2. And then that's 2 weeks after that. And then I'm immune. Then I can dance around. But anyway, so read this. This is if we were in normal times, if we were all vaccinated, or at least 80% of us, we'd be doing that. This was the role play I always attached to Virginia Satir. This is what the therapist, if you said, I want to be a therapist today, this would have been your job. So just read through this and tell me how comfortable would you be doing this? And of course, they'd be your classmates you're doing this with. It doesn't get any more touchy-feely than this. This is really the main one we need to just kind of get down and understand. What you're reading about is Virginia's hallmark technique. And you kind of saw it in the other previous ones. You're really going to see it in this next one, called family sculpting. And family sculpting, it's not for everybody. And you'll understand, you'll get a feeling if some clients would totally not be into this at all. But family sculpting is when you literally have people move themselves around in very symbolic ways. So one, talk about the problem and the issue. Show me what the problem looks like. I told on Tuesday a story, a couple that I had. I know we're running out of time here. But had a couple of just communication issues, blah, blah, blah. And I had the wife, it's like, just show me in there. I had to explain it like 3 times. She totally was not understanding what I wanted them to do. But like, move your husband around, move the chairs around. What does the problem look like? And then you could saw the light bulb go off. And what she did is she had her husband, like literally, she opened up the door to the room and put one of his feet outside of the room, the other one inside of the room. And then she sat way over there and she said, this is how I feel every day inside her house. I feel like he's partly here, but always out there. He's never really here with us. He's never here with the kids. And then, so, okay, great. Did the guy get that? He's like, okay, I see, for some people, this is what it takes. They need something pragmatic. And so we did the same thing with the guy. And he actually he spied across the room a little baby chair that we had, those little tiny chairs from like preschool. And he sat in the very middle of the room and he sat down on it and he put his wife right behind him. And he said, this is how I feel in our marriage. Like, I feel like she's not a spouse, she's a parent. And man, I totally got that one. She was like the dominator of the therapy room. Like she always spoke over him, always said what we were going to do. And he had never expressed this to her before. What husband tells their wife, you're more like a mom than right? This is the first time he had expressed this. And then she got it. He started to see his role. She started to see her role. Like, I never knew he felt this way. I never knew she felt this. So you see this helps. And this is an example of her doing this in real time. Good way to say goodbye to Virginia. You'll definitely see what I mean when I said sometimes she is right there. Like sometimes, literally. So the boy in this family has a drug problem.
Can you tell me, in this family, what this pull was all about? How you got in the middle between these two? What do you mean? How did you get in the middle so that you felt pulled? To do something for Michael would be something against Richard, or to do something for Richard would be against Michael. How did that work?
Well, it seemed like Mike was always calling me. To do things for him.
And I was always, I don't know. And I went ahead and did it and lost my hand a lot of times. Okay. I knew at this moment, and you learned anything to help you to get out of this very painful position of being between these two men. I tried to be myself. All right. Now, before we sit down, would you pull and would you pull? Now, at this moment, is there anything you heard from your mother
that you're not getting?
More peace of mind. That she has peace of mind.
Right. Can you look at her directly and just say to her, I want you to have peace of mind?
I want you to have peace of mind, Mama.
And how? Can you tell her what you want for yourself?
Pertaining to drugs.
I don't know what you want for yourself, love. What do you want for yourself?
I want happiness. I want peace of mind.
Okay.
So she's right there. All right. That's Virginia Satir. So hopefully we'll open the door now to experiential therapy. We'll take a different direction next week. And online, now that I know, we stopped in the same place exactly as Tuesday. So online, you'll get introduced to a guy by the name of Carl Whitaker. Different theoretical perspective. It'll get the ball rolling, I guess. So there's some online stuff to watch about Carl Whitaker. And then we'll kind of like a bridge. We'll come back to him briefly next week, but then we'll switch gears as well. End stream.